So now I want to turn to Tom Farrell, and he has got something that I really think is going to be fantastic. He blew me away last week. He has had more views on what he did last week than any other program that we've ever run on our show. He's had over 230, I think now, separate views of just his one segment of the show last week. So I know that you all are enjoying what he's doing. I know I am. And so, Tom, I will take it over to you, sir.
Thank you for having me again, and thank you for the accolades. This time I can say I have something really interesting, really special. Going to feature the John Allen engine house. And in On30. We give a little history of who John Allen is for those who might not know. And that's the John Allen house arted up. This is John Allen himself. He's basically the most famous model railroader in the world. He's the creator of the gory and defeated railroad. A lot of us got into the hobby because of him. You know, he was an inspiration, and he was a pioneer in the hobby. I think probably most of the people on this program know who he is, but perhaps some of the middle and younger age people don't. Joni Keister, he's pretty famous himself. His real he did the obituary and Railroad Model Craftsman for John when he passed away. Key thing I picked out of there is his real talent was just plain and simple model building. He was really the first of his kind to do weathering, scratch building on a really scale, realistic level. He was quite an amazing modeler. The biggest influence for me in the hobby of model railroading was John Allen. I put this in here because countless model railroaders have said this over the decades. Even though he was a great modeler and innovator, he was his nickname was the Wizard of Monterey. He lived in Monterey, California. By profession, he was a professional photographer. Did a lot of articles for all the magazines, but he didn't take himself too seriously. His gory and defeated, I mean, just the name itself, it's spelled Gorre, but it's gory is how you pronounce it. And defeated, he spells it a special way. It just shows his wit. And you can't really see it here, but it says, "We ain't modern, but we're progressive." I mean, he just had a little humor to everything he did. And to this realistic photograph, there's the engine house that I'll be featuring. So he pops his head up in there. He just had a lot of fun with the hobby. Passed away the age of 60 with a heart attack, unfortunately. And shortly, within a couple of days after his funeral, a bunch of his modelers got together to run his layout, quote, one last time. They didn't realize it would be the last time. They turned on an industrial furnace that was down in the basement of his Monterey home, and it had some asphalt shingles on it, unbeknownst to the operators, and the whole place caught fire and burned to the ground. And so ended the greatest model railroad that ever was made. This is some of the humor that he would do. He made this swayback boxcar. And he had these characters on his layout that people began to know by name over the years. He started writing for these magazines post World War II. The engine house that I'm going to feature was featured in a railroad magazine in 1948. Here's another one of his whimsical things. His switcher was this, he wrote this whole thing on the Stegosaurus that did all the switching in his yard. So he had a very interesting sense of humor and extraordinary modeling skills. This is perhaps the most iconic structure in our hobby, the John Allen engine house. I mean, this was made in 1948, was featured in a two-part article. I actually have the actual magazine from 1948 as reference material. It was a two-part series. There's reference drawings in there and how we went through it. Just gorgeous model. You know, that's 75 years ago, guys. I also have the fine scale miniatures HO engine house, unbuilt in mint condition. I purchased this probably 20 years ago. It's on my shelf along with the other kits that I never build. But this particular one is interesting. $9.95. If you go on eBay this evening, there's one of these for sale right now for $599. Now, I'm not sure anybody's actually going to get $600 for one of these, and I have no intention of selling this, but that's just shows you the legacy of John Allen. There are no other fine scale miniature kits that are worth between, let's be realistic, $350 and $600. It's because it's John Allen. Now, I'm not unfamiliar with the John Allen engine house. Approximately 20 years ago, I began a scratch build in HO scale. And I don't actually model in HO scale. I just wanted to do a near duplicate of the John Allen engine house. And these photographs I took just actually this morning. I never finished this kit, or it's not a kit, it's a scratch build. I never finished the scratch build, but I am going to finish it because it's basically almost done. I have to put the walls up, finish this particular side, and put a roof on. But this thing has quite a bit of detail. It looks like we have a little bit of dust and spider webs, but it's probably 20 years old. So, I mean, it needs finishing, and I'll do that. But so I am familiar with the John Allen engine house. And in his article, he says, and I quote, "Should you decide your railroad needs a shop of this type, change dimensions and plans to fit your own locos and other requirements." John Allen, October 1948. Who am I to argue with the greatest model railroader of all time? So begins my On30 version. His HO structure would, if I followed the plans exactly, would be 16.5 inches in length in O scale. Now, I model an On30, which is still, you know, O scale, but my locomotives are considerably smaller than standard gauge. Plus, I don't have the real estate to put in a 16.5 inch and perhaps 10-inch wide model. So I did selective compression of John Allen's engine house, and like all my models, it's starting to sound redundant, but I start with a piece of plywood. And on this particular piece, I drew out the floor plan. It fits the location in Shantytown, which I've been working on. It's going to feature an engine house at the end of the line. This is it, and this is the space I have. So I selectively compress the John Allen engine house. Anybody that's after this program, anybody that's familiar with the John Allen engine house will instantly recognize this as a John Allen themed engine house. Now, I normally just start with a piece of plywood and have at it. No plans, no drawings, nothing. But this required me to fire up my CAD program and draw out the front of this engine house, because John did this. Of course, he didn't have CAD, but these are, I think Dennis mentioned that the modeler he's featuring had perfect proportions. Well, I got to tell you, you appreciate the genius of John Allen when you're trying to lay out the front of this building, this structure, this engine house. This putting the right radius here and fitting in these decorative pieces and this circular window. I have to tell you, this took several hours to figure this one out. And John Allen did this, I mean, he winged it. And if you Google John Allen engine houses online, you'll see everybody screws this up because they don't try it with CAD. I mean, with CAD, I had to move everything around, and it took a while to get everything parallel and perpendicular. And so I printed out the drawing, and then I rubber cemented it to this Strathmore board. And it's full scale for my model. And I wanted to make sure that my locomotives would fit through those openings. I just wanted to be real careful with this one. So I glued these wings on. I threw some track down. I taped them temporarily to the base of my model, my plywood. And I put a couple, these are going to be the engine house for my two Shea locomotives. You can see it, all kinds of powder on here from this. But so I wanted to make absolutely sure they fit. I didn't want to go to all this trouble and then have clearance problems. I've talked about Monster board in the past, Monster Model Works. I spent a little bit of money here, I have to admit, contrary to John Allen, who did everything with cardboard and total scratch build. But these materials are so attractive, and I didn't want to disrespect my John Allen engine house. So sorry, hold on. This thing comes up and ruins my presentation. Hold on, sorry. Oh, damn it. Hold on, there we go. Okay. Everything cool? Okay. So I purchased, these are actually 3 different scales. These shingles are HO scale, because I thought the O scale ones were too big. So this will be the roofing material. This wood siding is actually S scale. That's going to be the floor of the engine house. And then the siding here is O scale, and that will be the sides of the building. And then even though I have an abundance of windows and doors and all, I didn't have this stuff. I had to order this special. A couple of weeks ago, Greg Cassidy said, I don't know how you turn these out every week. It takes me time to get the materials in-house. Well, one of my delays in starting this was getting all these windows and all this siding and all these materials. This is what's required for the engine house. I actually prefer Tichy over Grantline because Tichy comes with pre-cut glazing, you know, the windows, the acetate. This you have to hand cut yourself, which is a pain. But I used Tichy where I could and filled in with Grantline. I deviated a little bit from John Allen. He has a random stone foundation, which he in the fine scale miniatures model and his model, he basically put up a foundation and he glued these pebbles onto the wall. I like to think if he if there were some things available like this, he probably would use them. My idea was to make this not concrete block, but cut limestone, a dimensional cut limestone block. Since my railroad features, it's a hybrid between Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my hometown, the gritty sections of Pittsburgh in the 1920s and 30s, and southern Indiana limestone belt. There's justification for my particular engine house to have the limestone foundation. So that's the other end of it. I also deviated in that on the John Allen engine house, there's a pass-through. This is the front of the engine house. This is the rear. On the John Allen engine house, this pass-through is actually on this side. But where I'm locating this structure, it makes more sense to reverse the rear and have the pass-through on this side of the structure. So once I had my foundation in and I had drawn in my tracks, I stripped this actually HO track code 100, I think. I stripped the plastic ties off and I super glued these down to the plywood. Later, not in this, in part 2, I will put in that flooring material, which is actually S scale material, but I wanted a tighter board on here than the O scale. But that'll be for another day. These are the materials, the paints that I've using for part 1 of this program. This is for the foundation. I started with this oyster beige, which represents a buff limestone, and then I will go back and touch it up with some gray. When you have a buff and a gray mix, we call that a variegated limestone. And then I'll go back and I'll hit it with this brown alcohol wash. I'm going to get to this in a moment. And then this is for the windows and the trim. And I did again deviate from the John Allen engine house. I saw in my research on all the people that have made John Allen engine houses, I saw one that they painted the inside white and trimmed it out with green, and it looked really neat, really old-fashioned. So instead of having a wood interior like my HO scratch-built one that I showed earlier, I thought it would be cool to do this old-fashioned white with green trim. It looks, I found one online, it just looked really neat, and I'm just taking that idea. Here's something from the blast from the past. I don't know how many of you are familiar with, they call this a, I think there's a railroad name for it, a pickling wash or some crazy name they have for it. But basically, you fill a container with white vinegar, you throw some steel wool in there, and you wait about a month, and the steel wool disappears. And you get this brown weathering wash. It's basically an iron oxide. And there's a very, very high-level modeler, Eberwein. He uses this all the time. And I've had this for, I'm ashamed to say, at least 10 years. I've never actually used it. But I thought, as an ode to old school John Allen, this is something he would use. That's about how old this technique is. I don't know how many of you have ever tried this. You'll see it's a pretty neat, neat look. So getting back to the model, my first coat was that, looks pinkish white here, but it's actually a buff color. That's the base coat. Now the inside of the stone wall, since the laser cut material is only on one side, and this is a relatively thick material, I couldn't double it up and have limestone on both sides. So I thought maybe it would be best to put in like a wainscoting, which would be unrealistic to cover up raw stone. So I glued this wainscoting around with yellow glue, couple drops of super glue on the end so it wouldn't lift. And then I gave it its first coat of that acrylic white craft paint, which is my paint of choice when possible, is to use these craft paints. There's just an overview. Looks like I've put a coat of something on here, the alcohol wash. Yeah, that was a screw up. It did turn pink, but I fixed that. And this is the white. The idea is to paint this first, then pre-stain the flooring. These will be placed in pieces in part 2, and then I won't get any paint on the flooring. So this will be finished, and then I'll put the pre-stained floor in here, you know, all across, and I won't have to worry about getting white paint in the floor or the flooring colors onto the paint. Next up were the sides, and this Monster Model Works material has an orientation. This side up, I drew this out. I just transferred my drawing from the CAD. This is that random board. Again, these are the best materials in the business. These boards are all laser etched. So they're just not outlined, they're laser etched. See, look at the wood grain there. Is that amazing? It's just amazing material. This was cut out with a modeler square I got from Micro Mark and a number 11 blade. Nothing fancy there. I test fit the windows just to make sure they all fit, make sure they're all level. They will be painted brown. And then I began the tedious modeling of putting interior detail, which reminds me on 99% of my models why I black them out, so I don't have to do this. But for this, you're going to see the inside, and I'm going to make it with a removable roof. So I totally finished. And this is to, these larger beams are where the roof supports, trusses will sit on. These are just support beams, and then these are cross members, and these are doubled up. This is just like real construction, where you double the windows and you put these creepers in so it doesn't, you don't get any warpage. That took quite a bit of time. Each piece has to be hand cut, glued, placed in with tweezers. So this one's finished, and this is the other side. The difference is this is the front side. This one has a door in it. So the place of this window is a door. So I cut that one out. Same technique, a modeler square, number 11 X-Acto blade, always a fresh, sharp blade. There it is, the reverse side, and there it is with the test fitting of the windows and the door. This protrudes down because remember we have a foundation, limestone foundation below. It's approximately ½ inch, which works out to be a couple feet. Then I began painting it with the craft paint, the white. All these fuzzies and things I sand off. But this was also tedious. I would have loved to spray this with just a white, flat white paint, but I was terrified that I would get paint on the opposite side, you know, the finished side, the outdoor side. Then it was all painted up. Now, Of course, I'll go in and I will weather this eventually, and you'll see how I finish it off. But this is the base coat again. Now to make it that old-fashioned look, I added this green. I think I'm going to go back and paint the outlines of just the outlines of these windows green too. This is a Floatwell dark green. There it is mounted. Now I've got to do some touch up here and some weathering. But this is how the model is shaping up. There's one of my locomotives in there for scale. And so there's plenty of clearance. That is the rusted, that pickle mix. That's what it looks like. These windows are not painted. They're just sitting in there for just for this photograph. I will go back and detail some of these individual, quote, limestone blocks. But that's approximate color that I like. And there will be trim on here. There's still a lot to do on this model. The model will feature trim pieces coming down here, trim pieces going across. But it's moving along. So that's my part one. Yeah, here's the trim pieces here. So this will be trimmed out. It might be a three-part series. It depends how ambitious I can get during the next week, how far I can move it. Any questions while I got it up?
It's not a question, Tom, but I agree with you on the Monster Model Works products. I've used some of their siding and their flooring, and they're just phenomenal. The way he etches it and it makes it look like it's a real product.
Yeah, and using the material as it's a flooring material, but I'm using it as a siding. It's just a sexy material. It's a good looking material. Yeah.
Beautiful model, no question. Anybody else have any questions? Tom, thank you so very much. Look forward to seeing what you've accomplished next week.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, sir.